Hey guys, Mikoshi here. Today, we're going to be talking about the part 6 of our bow build journey. This is going to be our final transition finally. We left at part 5 where we transitioned from a non-omni to an omni build, and then finally we're going to go for our Trinity setup to our physical to cold conversion setup, which is going to be our end build. So basically 5 videos just to get to this video. This is going to be a guide on how to transition and not a guide and not a build guide. So if you came here to really have, step by step how to make your build, that's going to be the next video. If you are a bit impatient, you can always watch the first video I've ever posted. It talks about how to scale damage with physical to cold conversion, so maybe if you want to check that out. But this part is really going to concentrate on just how to transition to physical to cold conversion, because this is a very, very important and critical moment for our build, and a lot of people get it wrong, and a lot of people are going to have a very big power drop from Trinity to physical to cold conversion. And so this video, well, my goal is going to be to help you guys not feel that much of a drop and have a very smooth transition. So yeah, as I said, it's the video about the transition and not how to make a physical to cold conversion build. So that's going to be in the next video. At this point, omniscience should already be in your build if you follow the videos. If you did not follow the videos, we had a omniscience Trinity tornado shot build. If you are lightning arrow and you want to transition to this build, if you already have omniscience, it shouldn't be that complicated, to be honest. You have to change just a few little things, but the rest will be pretty easy. The next video will be the actual guide on tornado shot, and I'm going to try to remake the first ever video, but with more details and without the mistakes I've made. If you guys are wondering about the tattoos, I've received a lot of questions about that. It will be in the next video, but I still think that the +1 arrow tattoo is pretty good. I only suggest one for now, the one next to the big arrow wheel. I'll be more in detail later in the video, but I don't think going out of your way to just add 1 or 2 arrows is worth it, especially with the drawback of you spending around like 10 to 15 passive points. I don't think it's really worth it. But then again, we will talk about it later in the video. After this video and the next one on the tornado shot build, I will be starting a new guide, and I've decided after, like all the feedback, I will be making a video series on crafting, and I will cover hopefully everything about crafting, from the basic crafting of, making a normal item a magic item, all the way up to mirror crafting tiers, stuff like that, analyzing how mirror tier items are made, and hopefully teach you guys like a few things about crafting. For this video, I'm going to try to still keep it, average level. If you're a really new player, I don't know if you're going to really understand everything. So just please let me know if it was like very, very confusing or not. But I think if you followed this guide and you've played the game and you're at the average level, you should be able to understand this guide very, very easily. So now let's get into the actual video. We're going to talk about first how the damage conversion works, our final transition, our gear, tree clusters, gems, and for the crafting part, it's going to be in later videos because it would take way too long on a single video. Just crafting the rings, which was the easiest thing, took like, I don't know, I think 10 to 15 minutes or something. So crafting our body armor and our gloves would take way too much time to make in a video on top of the transition. So I'll try to make that on the side, maybe just a single video for every single item. Maybe I'll see that later on. Alright, so let's get into it really. How does damage conversion works? So you must first of all, there must be the basic damage output and a converted damage output, right? So for us, it's going to be physical. So our first basic damage output is going to be physical damage, and then all of that physical damage will be converted to cold damage, which will be our end damage. For example, I deal 100 physical damage with a 50% cold conversion. Well, 50% of our physical is going to be converted to cold, which means that on the 100 physical damage output, we're going to have 50 fizz, 50 cold. Our goal will be a 100% cold conversion, which means our 100 physical will be 100 cold. The thing is, it won't be just 100 cold, and that's what's great about damage conversion, and we'll talk about it just a bit later in the video. If you wonder what is the order of conversion, it's physical to lightning, lightning to fire, fire, cold, and chaos. Now, which means that for us, it doesn't really matter it really doesn't matter whatsoever because we only go from physical to cold, so we won't have any order problems. However, some conversions are, I think the right word is intrinsic to the skill, which means the skill itself does the conversion, so it's part of the skill, and it will not follow any order, and it will not be able to be modified. Only the rest that is not converted will follow the order and logic of conversion, and if everything is 100% converted, it is impossible to do any sort of conversion. A good example of that is Burning Arrow converts 100% physical damage to fire. So even if we have a 100% physical to cold conversion, because the skill itself converts 100% of our physical to fire, we will not convert a single percentage to cold. Also, when the value of all our conversion add up to more than 100%, we reduce them in proportion to 100. Basically, if I have 100 converted to cold and 100 converted to fire, it's going to end up being 50 to cold and 50 to fire. Now, what's great about conversion? Well, because scaling damage on the base damage output will be shown in the conversion. For example, if I deal 100 physical damage with a 100% cold conversion and we have a 50% physical increase, well, we deal 150 cold because it's 100 fizz times 1.5, which is 150 fizz, and then 100 to cold. The thing is, we are often limited on how much we can scale a single type of damage, right? You can go maybe up to 200, 300, 400% increased physical damage, but after that, you're gonna reach a ceiling, and to go higher will cost you unbelievable amount of currency. What conversion does, it enables us to scale types of damage twice, which means once we start, getting limited to increasing our physical, well, we can start increasing our elemental and cold damage for us. So for example, if we scale our cold by 50%, we would get 50% strength, physical, and cold, which means that if we have 150 DPS, physical DPS, if we had the 50 fizz increase here, and we add on top of that the 50 cold, we get 150 physical DPS converted to cold, which is 150 cold, and then we get 50% cold damage, which ends up being 225. Our total damage increase is 100%, right? 50 fizz, 50 cold. But instead of going from 100 to 200, which example, if I have a 100% increased physical, I go to 225. And that's what's really, really great about conversion layers. On top of conversion layers, we have double dipping. Double dipping is when damage increase source scales with our base damage output as well as our converted damage output. That's double dipping for us, right? And the good example of that is hatred. Any increase, hatred says that at level 20, we gain 25% of our physical damage as extra cold. Well, any increase in physical damage will then increase the effect of hatred. Well, it won't increase the effect, but hatred will be stronger, right? And any increase in cold damage will also increase how strong hatred is, which means hatred scales with physical and cold, so both of our scaling, and that's our double dipping. So it's increases of damage that increases thanks to two sources. That's why in our gear, you're often going to see increases of hatred, right? Increase effect of hatred and increase effect of non-curse auras, because we want to scale the strength of our hatred aura. So now the long-awaited transition. With the last video, we started the foundation of our build by first transitioning to Omniscience to facilitate the transition we will partake in this video. What that means is you already have your Omniscience gear ready. You already have your rings, you already have your helmet, you already have your belt, and 95% of your tree, so small node changes, are already up to date. So all we need to do is change our bow, our body armor. Now it will depend, but we might change our body armor, we might not, but our bow, our gloves, which are literally the most important gear piece of the transition, and finally, boots if needed. To be honest, if you really just want to go physical to cold without changing the least amount of things, all you're gonna have to do is change your bow and your gloves as well as a few gems, and that's it. All right. If you start from scratch, it will then be a bit harder to just get to this point, as it's gonna be a bit more costly. So we played the Trinity setup, which deals all 3 types of elemental damage. Now, we're only going to go from cold damage output build with physical scaling. So the most important steps of the transitions are in order: being able to convert 100% of our physical damage, or unbelievably close. And when I mean unbelievably close, I mean like 95. All right. If you're really not able to and you don't have the capacity to do so, any percentage of non-increase, like if you don't reach 100, all that percentage that you're far from 100 is basically you cutting your DPS, right? So if you're 80%, you basically have 20% DPS just disappeared, and it will feel worse than the Trinity setup. Right after you get to 100% physical to cold converted, all we need to do is scale our DPS, our physical damage output. All right, any increase to physical will be tremendous amount of DPS. Okay, and once you get both of that, all you're gonna have to do is just having more currency to, you know, start getting better gear. But that's really the base of our conversion. Now obviously we have omniscience behind that, but just this step, it's all we need. So now, how do we convert our damage? Well, we only need 2 things. First, we need the cold mastery. I will be talking about it later in the video. It will give us 40% of our physical damage converted to cold. So now we are only left with 60%, and the rest will be converted thanks to our gloves, which will give us the 60% needed. And that's going to be achievable with implicits and explicits. The gloves. So these are the enablers of our build of utmost importance, okay? Without your gloves, your build will feel very, very bad. And they enable our conversion, right? So we're a conversion build, so without conversion, there's no point, all right? They will also be a source of rage for like harder mobs, but really, most importantly, they are the enablers of conversion. For your gloves, you're gonna want the physical damage converted to cold right here, all right? Most important thing. And then your second implicit, I suggest the gain 1 rage per hit, no more than 1 rage per whatever second. For your explicits, the most important, physical damage converted to cold. There's no need of minimum numeric values. As long as both of them do 60% or more, you're gonna be happy. Suppression is very good. Increase attacks damage with hits against chilled enemies. That is expensive mod, I think, if you want to roll them. If you don't have it for now, it's okay. But if you can, very, very strong mod. Attack speed, damage during flask effect is a very good one. Or life, depending if you have enough DPS and you just want to, you know, scale a bit more HP, go for life. For your bow, well, the bow is going to be the main source of a physical damage scaling, okay? So the most important item, once we have 100% converted, is our bow, and it's going to be half your budget all the time, all right? So example, you say, okay, I have a 20 divine budget. I want to put 10 divine in my bow, 10 divine in the rest of my gear. Oh, 300 divine budget. Well, maybe I'll go 150 and then the rest in the rest of the gear, right? The thing is, what's great about if you follow the steps is your tree should be already finished and most of your gear would already be ready for your transition, and all you're going to need to do is getting those gloves and then a better bow. And then once you get a good chest, you don't really have to change anything. So your bow will always be, you know, oh, what can I make better? What can I get that will make my build better? Well, it's going to be a bow. All right. For your bow, you want a critical base, right? A spine bow is usually the best ones, as it has a very base crit chance, and very good attack speed, obviously. And then you want increased physical damage. All right. The higher the increase of physical, the better it is. Look, you already know a 150 to 200 increased physical is going to be a huge DPS burst. So just anything that has a very, very high physical. Additional arrows, as we've seen, Tornado Shot scales extremely well with more arrows. Added flat physical, attack speed, critical, accuracy. You do not want a single defensive mod. Not a single one, all right? Don't want to see anything with resistance or life. You don't want any of that. You want your bow to be pure physical damage, okay? Amulets and rings, I won't go that much in details because we spoke about it in the last video. Amulet, only omniscience is acceptable at this point, unless you're like MFing and you really have very, very strong gear. But for you guys, I think omniscience is the way to go. For your rings, we already spoke about them, but they are the omniscience enablers, right? Without them, we won't be able to really use omniscience. And if we are able to use omniscience without them, well, we can't really use omniscience to its fullest potential, because they give a very, very big, they're one of the biggest source of omniscience. After that, you know, you want flat life or flat damage. Depends on the June mod that you unveil. I suggest going for life. This one, yeah, was life. Because with 2 rings plus 110 HP, because we don't really have a lot of life mods, they are very useful. And then finally, the minus total mana cost of non-channeling skills, which will make our tornado shot cost almost nothing, but we don't want it to cost nothing, but almost nothing, and that really helps for mana problems. For your helmet, if the rings were the enabler of omniscience, well, the helmet is the augmenter, right? Black Sun Crest is really a very strong item. You don't have to have the perfect roll 15 15 15, as long as I think you have a total of more than 38-39%. Very strong. Heat Shiver is very good, but often the goal is to one-shot everything, so getting something frozen to then deal damage is quite useless unless you're bossing, right? So Heat Shiver is really good for big DPS numbers, but for general people, Black Sun Crest is the better option. For your belt, if you have Mage Blood, use it, don't even think. If you do not have Mage Blood, don't worry, you don't need to. You want the highest increase of attributes possible, added life, and other useful mods. Any percentage increase of any attribute is very good as an implicit. You can, with quality, you can get up to like 18%, which is very good. And then, you know, you put essences to get, you know, more attributes, sorry, and you'll be just fine. All right, you don't have to spend that much on your belt, and it's usually very easy to craft. For your boots, I suggest avoid ailments or other useful mods if you're ailment avoided, and then action speed. Action speed is the best implicit. If not, or not enough currency, right, run for the movement speed. For your explicits, you want movement speed, all right? Your boots are supposed to make you fast. You don't want to be a slow character, you're a mapper, right? The goal is to go fast. If you're not capped, a suppress mod, an avoid ailment mod if you're not capped, and then life. If you are already capped with like suppress and avoid, then just go for attributes. For your quiver, only offensive mods. At this point, there's no excuse, all right? You want a pierce or an arrow speed base, right? Any or, you know, a synthesized base. But if you have a synthesized base, you probably know what you're doing. But you want only offensive mods, right? No defense. Only accuracy and life could be exceptions, but the rest you only want damage outputs. For your body armor, crafting an omniscience chest can be expensive, especially if you wanted to do it well. So I suggest high resire and not really try under 20. Well, maybe 10 divines actually. 20 is a bit of an exaggeration, but high resire is, I think, 6 divines for a 6 link. So, and it's very good because it gives 30% suppress spell damage, which is huge, and unbelievable amount of evasion. And on top of that, you have big added cold damage, so it's an added flat that is very strong. But if you want to self-craft it yourself, for your implicits, you want hatred as increased effect and increased effect of non-curse auras. Those are going to be the implicits you want, nothing else, all right? For your explicits, I did not add the increased global defense because it is a very expensive mod, but you want the mana reservation efficiency, very important, spell suppression, ailment avoidance, flat life, chaos resistance, attributes, in that order. For your passive tree, I suggest you copy this tree for now. Now, if you want to test more things with the tattoos, I suggest then you wait a bit. This tree is a very good general tree for... It follows, you know, the progression, and then once you go for the tattoos, it will be in the next video, and I'll show many examples of different trees if you want to be like, you know, more dedicated to mapping. You want more arrows. I will be talking about that in another video, in the next video. We're going to use the Deadeye Ascendancy, obviously. We're going to need Cluster Jewels, a Watcher's Eye, a Lethal Pride, a Thread of Hope, and Forbidden Flesh and Flame if you have the budget. For your Ascendancy, I suggest Focal Point, Far Shot, Endless Munition, and Gathering Winds. If you were a dedicated mapper, you can drop Focal Point and go for Chain. But if you really want to do all-rounder with big DPS, then go for the Focal Point. For your passive tree, important nodes, in the crit family and the raw damage, the bow mastery increases to and reductions to projectile speed also apply to damage with bows. This is a huge damage increase. Unbelievable damage increase. For your mastery, I suggest the 25% crit strike multiplier against unique enemies. Pretty good. And then the rest, you know, are only going to be increases to crit and increases to damage. Pretty basic. For the elemental family, the most important one, we want the cold mastery with 40% physical damage converted to cold. And then after that, we want the treat 25 hits have 25% chance to treat enemy monsters elemental resistance values as inverted. We already spoke about omniscience and the strength of that, but to give you an example, if you have 100 damage against an enemy that has 50% resistance, you deal 50 damage. If you have 100 damage against an enemy that has minus 50 res, you deal 150. So basically tripling your DPS 25% of the time, which is absolutely huge. Stat family, only one. Just go for attribute mastery with 5% increased attributes. That's it. That's a total of 15% increased omniscience. It's very good for elemental resistance and elemental penetration. For the marks, I suggest you get Culling Strike. Culling Strike, what it is the moment an enemy is at 10% HP or less, any source of damage, whether it's it could be one damage, it will insta-kill them, which basically increases your DPS by a raw 10 no matter what. And then also, the Mastery will give you a 10% chance against Frenzy Charge when you hit a marked enemy. So when you're bossing and you don't have time to kill any enemies with, you know, Blood Rage, because there's only a single enemy, you still want Frenzy Charges, right? And that Mastery will help you get the frenzy charges needed against single target enemies. Accuracy, very important. People do not understand how important accuracy it is, okay? If you miss half the shots, you're basically cutting your DPS in half. So accuracy will make that you don't miss your shots and you don't miss your criticals, all right? Because we do not have dex, for every single dex you have +2 accuracy. But because we use omniscience, we don't have any dexterity bonus except the base 32. So we're going to have to use accuracy nodes and the accuracy mastery to get that accuracy rating as high as possible to be able to hit 100% of our shots, all right? We want to cap that. It's really important. Amulet Enchant, I suggest multi-shot. You're going to be able to save 4 points in your passive tree to get more DPS. It gives extra arrows. Pretty basic. No need to really explain that one. We already know that it scales well with more arrows. For your cluster jewels, there's two families of cluster jewels. There's the 8 passives and 12 passives. Now I'm repeating myself, so if you already watched this part, you can just skip it. But for the new ones out here, for the 8 passives, you want Martial Prowess, Feed the Fury, and another added passive, all right? The added passive is important that it's the one in the middle, okay? You want Feed the Fury and Martial Prowess in the front here, and one random one that we will not use, we don't need it, but it's just to make sure that both Martial Prowess and Feed the Fury are right in front. And thanks, because if they were like if one of them was in the middle, you would have to spend 2 points to get to it, and you're basically wasting passive points. Make sure also, guys, that your base is the 12% increased damage with bows, okay? I've bought, you know, bases like that for cheap, and I've bought like cluster jewels, and I was happy that I got it for cheap. And then I realized it's like, oh, well, small passive grants 12% increased damage with staffs, which we're basically wasting a passive point. For the 12 passive ones, we want 4 modded with no added passive is possible. We want increased effect, that's in order of importance. Increased effect, attack speed, attack damage, and attributes. If you don't have the budget to get all 4, get increased effect, and then increased attributes, and maybe a low roll on attack speed, right? But the most important one is increased effect, and just basically anything that is not resistance, okay? Anything that is not resistance, and you want 4 modded if possible, because that will greatly boost your DPS. For your medium clusters, first of all, a 4 or 5 passive medium cluster changes absolutely nothing. 4 passive clusters are always more expensive, but it changes nothing, right? I use 4 points to get all the things I want. I spend 4 points for the points I want to spend, right? So 5 or 4 changes absolutely nothing. It's a trap. They are damage and crit clusters, all right? For the damage clusters, you want eye to eye and repeater, and crit, you want pressure points and quick getaway. If you're uncapped for your crit, even though the crit clusters will deal less damage than the increases of damage, you still want to get that crit to 100%, all right? So I suggest you get pressure point and quick getaway, and the moment you know you start getting more critical strike chance, you drop them to go for eye to eye and repeater. For your jewels, we're almost done there, guys. I think we're almost done. Thread of Hope, you only want a massive ring, all right? There's no purpose of getting Thread of Hope that is not a massive ring. And for Lethal Pride, now, Lethal Pride inherently gives strength, which is very good for omniscience, but it also gives double damage increases and increases to physical damage, which is absolutely huge, all right? Lethal Pride is a very, you know, for high-end players, we all know what Lethal Pride gives, but a lot of new players think it's really like not that important, but it's a really low-key, very strong boost to your build. My tattoos, my thoughts. Now, I've seen on Reddit a new post where they're able to get like a +4 arrow thanks to, you know, the cluster jewel location. So I won't speak on that. But I've seen a lot of players, you know, going out of their ways just to get +2 arrows. And, you know, spending 15 passive points to get +2 arrows, the drawback is too high, all right? If you're spending 5, 6, or 7, maybe. But 10 to 15, the drawback with the passive points are not worth it. Especially that with your gear, you should be able to get 7 to 8 arrows without graded multiple projectile with ease. So losing basically 10% of your passive tree just to get +2 arrows, I don't think it's worth it. Especially it also costs like 15 divines, so I don't really think it's worth it. Also, do I think that changing your +10 dex to other tattoos a good thing? Yes, I think that tattoos are still very underrated in Path of Exile, and people don't really grasp how strong they're going to be. And so I do suggest, if you want to modify your build a bit, you know, projectile speed, movement speed, stuff like that, instead of your dex, if you have enough omniscience, I think it's worth it. But don't go overboard, all right? Don't use all of your dexterity to get more tattoos, because I think there's going to be like a point where it's going to be worse than better. And my opinion on Warrior's Tale, as I said, don't go out of your way, okay? And Warrior's Tale is not as strong as a good rolled Lethal Pride, and it will never be, okay? Lethal Pride is very strong, so don't change, you know, the Lethal Pride area for a Warrior's Tale. I do not think it's worth it. If you want a very safe tattoo, is this one next to the bow wheel, the +1 arrow. I think that's really safe, really easy, because you already use all 7 adjacent points. Pretty easy. I think also the gain onslaught on hit is a very strong tattoo, and I would tattoo a few of my dexterity passives for anything that, you know, fits your own playstyle. And for the new tattoo location, I will be talking about it in the next video. So yeah, I still think tattoos are very strong, but guys, don't go overboard and don't go out of your way to get more arrows. Gem setup. If you've watched my first video, it didn't change. The gem setup is going to be our final gem setup. We were Tornado Shot, Awaken Vicious Projectile, which increases our physical damage. If you're running Heat Shiver, Hypothermia, if not, and you're mapping, I suggest Awaken Chain, and then Awaken Elemental Damage, Anomalous Inspiration Support, and increase critical damage. For our second 6 link, we want Sniper's Mark, Divergent Mark on Hit, Awaken Enhance, Blood Rage, Steel Skin, Berserk. For our DPS auras, we want Herald of Purity, which increases our physical, Hatred, obviously, Awaken in lane or Align if you can't, and Val Haste. Only use the Val variant, don't use the normal haste. You don't need haste in your build. It's just for, you know, certain moments where you need more DPS, you just Val it. After that, you can go Ensnaring Arrow, Frenzy, Power Charge, and create Mana Forge Arrow. I've had feedback saying that Ensnaring Arrow does not work, Sniper's Mark, but because Sniper's Mark is only on single target, Ensnaring Arrow can shoot other targets, and the first hit will have the buff of Ensnaring Arrow. If you guys have critical strike chance that is already 100% capped in your hideout, drop Power Charge and put a random bow skill, alright? If you're not capped, then Power Charge on crit will get you capped, because every single Power Charge increases your critical strike chance by 50%. Finally, Flame Dash, Anomalous Precision, Awaken in lane, Anomalous, Blood and Sand. It has to be Anomalous, Blood and Sand, alright? If it's not Anomalous, Blood and Sand won't do anything for you, because the quality will increase the projectile speed, which is going to be an increase of damage thanks to our Bow Mastery. Flame Dash, it's down to personal choice whether I like Flame Dash, because on a single link, it's able to deal you're able to use it like 3 times without having to wait to like recharge. And Precision, you know, to get that critical strike chance and that accuracy rating. Finally, important, okay guys, do not get your Tornado Shot to 0 mana. If you get your Tornado Shot down to 0 mana, you cannot use Inspiration Support, and you basically lose a gem, okay? And inspiration support is so strong, so I do not think switching it to something else and getting it to 0 is worth it, because inspiration is just mad strong. Okay, how do you do that? Well, what I use is the anomalous inspiration support at level 20 with a 21% increase, reduced mana cost of skill on a mage blood, and then -4 to total mana cost. If you do not have mage blood, do not worry. You can just go -7, -7. It won't be to 1 mana, but it will be pretty low, and you'll be just fine. That's it, guys. If you guys wanted, you know, the build guide, I'm sorry, it's gonna have to wait for the next video. I wanted to make a video on just how to transition and like how the transition actually works. I try to make it as quickly as I could, because I know, like, because in the beginning I really thought you guys are gonna take a time, you know, to get to this point, and just like already like 2 weeks ago, I think you guys were already DMing me like, hey guys, hey Mikoshi, what do I do for the transition? What do I do for this transition? I already have 100 divines, stuff like that. So, you know, I try to put it as fast as I can. The thing is, with personal life, you know, I have, well, school, I have work, I have, you know, real life stuff, and then after that I have the video games, which is like not, you know, now YouTube is like more a priority than even Path of Exile, but you know, I still want to play the game and not just like mindlessly just shooting out guides. But yeah, don't worry about it. Next week you should be having the tornado shot build guide. It will be a remake of my first video with added information with the tattoos. And as I announced earlier, the next video series is going to be on how to craft in Path of Exile. I'm going to be explaining everything you need to know about crafting on a multiple video series. So it's probably going to take, you know, many 1 hour to 30-minute videos to explain how crafting works, stuff like that. So that's the end of the video. Hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, I have a Discord server now, so you're able to join the Discord and ask me questions directly, or ask anybody in the Discord server. I have the 2 mods who will greatly help in the build questions section. So if you guys want to know, if you guys have any questions, sorry, you can go there. And if you really don't feel comfortable asking, you know, in public, you can always DM me personally in Discord, and I will answer you. So if you have any criticism or any questions, please let me know in the comments down below or in Discord. And, you know, hopefully this helps, and have fun, guys.